Dave Leopard. He was a true rebel, a poet, and a hero to many. But he was also absolute in his mission to save glam metal. His Right in Everyone moment defined an era, firmly re-establishing glam metal's relevance in the mainstream with an album that would inspire many to follow in his footsteps. We lost a very special human being the day he tragically departed this world. He left a band and a fandom forever in mourning. Ever since that day, it's been a revolving door of singers, with only one coming close to truly capturing the essence of what Dave and his band was all about. And that's why I chose to make the previous Crashdiet documentaries. I wanted to celebrate Dave's life and tell you what he meant to me. I wanted the world to know who he was, and I wanted to tell you why I thought Generation Wild was the true successor to Right in Everyone, because for me, it wasn't this album. That was Crashdiet in Mourning and Off Kilter. To really give you the full story, I have to take you back a little bit. It was like an old episode of Stars in Your Eyes. Through a haze of synth and dry ice, like magic he seemed to appear beside me. The teen heartthrob himself, Mr. Olli Herman, the Olli Herman, former frontman of Crashdiet, and in that moment in time, the lead singer of Reckless Love. At present he is a celebrity in his own country who frequently appears on TV, radio and magazines. Propped up by MTV3 Suomi, he has appeared in various reality and talent team programs. He also DJs from time to time and is currently a member of the Finnish rock group Papida. Papida is to Finland what Tin Lizzy is to Ireland, so it's a pretty huge deal. He was also part of another supergroup a couple of years ago called The Local Band. But back then, himself and his band represented some of the best of what glam metal had to offer in the new wave. Reckless Love was a band that suited Olli perfectly. Their debut was cool, it was flamboyant. It was a little gay, but in the chicks dig us kind of way. Reckless Love were like Van Halen and TNT combined. They balanced the aesthetics of AOR with a somewhat modern glam metal sound. Olli did, and still does to this day, resemble the love child of Arnold Schwarzenegger and David Lee Roth combined, if such a thing could exist. He's larger than life. He was just about the same height as me, built like a brick shithouse with a really high vocal range to match. He was, and still is, a Eurovision's wet dream. I happened to be friends with the opener at the time and found myself in the middle of a rehearsal for the gig that was to happen later that evening. He reached out his hand to shake mine and in that unmistakable Scandinavian accent said, "Hi, I'm Olli." I of course shook his hand and told him how much of a fan I was, but in the back of my mind all I could think of was how he didn't quite look super mega as he did in his music videos. In reality, there was no haze of dry ice either. Of course there wasn't, but that's how I prefer to remember that particular encounter. But he did appear out of thin air, decked out in lycra, cowboy boots and whatever other knickknacks he got from Claire's accessories. As we both looked towards the stage where the rest of the band stood rehearsing what I understood to be the end of their song, Sex, I couldn't help but have this burning question in the back of my mind that I dared not to ask. But looking back, I really wish I had have asked it. Why the hell did you leave Reckless Love to join Crashdiet in the first place, especially if this was your band? I mean, you don't get it. These guys were incredible. At the time, Reckless Love were on their debut album tour with Jet Black, but before this, Olli was the lead singer of Crashdiet during the Unattractive Revolution era, going under the name Oliver H. Twisted, an era that I so often forget exists because the album they made together just, it feels so out of place for me. Everything from its packaging to the songs themselves feel off somehow, lacking the same gravitas as the debut, and I'm not the only one to feel this way, but what if I just truly didn't get it until now? The overall tone of this album is dark and gritty. Songs like Raw, Ecstasy Overdrive and I Don't Care focus less on the message of rebellion and more on the fucked up and it being okay to exist in it. They're not trying to change the world on this album, they're simply shining a light on how it really is. And that was the unattractive. The revolution is trying to accept and embrace all of that chaos and exist within. It's a message that is somewhat removed from the hopeful and powerful message of Right in Everyone. And maybe that's why it feels so out of place. But maybe the reason the lyrics didn't hit me and a lot of other people was because of who was delivering them. In 2007, Crashdiet were still the hottest ticket in town, on a major label with debut album chart success under their belts. Leaders of an ever-growing scene of glam metal groups riding their coattails hoping for the same success they had managed to gain. But after tragically losing their lead singer, the band found themselves in the throes of mourning and needing a replacement. And so, along came Olli. They wanted Simon, but they couldn't have him straight away, and all the would-be audition hopefuls just didn't seem to measure up. For me, it felt like an obvious disconnect, and this is no more self-evident than the DVD, The Unattractive Revolution. God, remember that thing? I remember the fateful day it arrived to my house. My dad had just finished work, he'd got in the door and I said, "Hey Dad, you gotta check out this DVD. It's of my favourite band, Crashdiet. Sit down and we watch it together." Oh boy. This DVD had a full gig with Olli as their new singer, but it also had a ton of additional footage too. It's full of highlights and behind the scenes clips of crazy jackass Viva La Bam type antics of the band whooping it up with bands like Sister and Hardcore Superstar along for the ride. It also has clips of Peter London sticking wine bottles up his arse and people snorting questionable powder off his arse. "Son, why is that androgynous blonde sticking a wine bottle up his arse?" I didn't really have an answer. There was also other clips of Peter trying to drunkenly get it on with Olli, so over on one side you had this crazy sleaze rock band drinking themselves silly, playing gay chicken with each other, running amok, living the life, and I assume trying to cope with their grief. And then standing in stark contrast to all of this, you had this clean living guy who loves saunas, tanning beds and reps in the gym, doing David Lee Roth inspired high kicks on the stage, singing these gritty dark tunes and smiling into the void in between songs, failing to play the role of the hardcore rock dude that the rest were truly living. It must have felt like a fever dream for everyone involved. His DNA as a singer for me didn't match Crashdiet's, neither did his energy, and again, it only begged the question, what was Olli doing in this band? Looking back over all of this bonus footage, it's quite easy to forget just how much the fans digged this era. They showed up in droves with Crashdiet seemingly selling out every venue and event they played. Universal Music still fully supported the group, with Anders constantly around for every major event happening, such as the album and music video production. While the rest of the rock world was embracing the craze of emo, the new wave of Swedish Sleaze was becoming a force to be reckoned with, and with Olli firmly at the helm. But again, there just seemed to be this disconnect between who Olli was as an artist and who Crashdiet were as a band, which is another reason the album felt disconnected for me. But let me make this clear. It's a great album. It even cameos Mick Mars and Motley Crue. Crashdiet did great things during this time. They toured heavily. They were nominated for a Swedish Grammy, and The Unattractive Revolution went to number 11 in the charts. For a band to go through what they did, and for a newcomer like Olli to leave behind his band, his country, and join up and go through it with them, I can't help but feel a massive amount of respect and emotion when I look back at all of this. This was truly our time, but for me, it just doesn't feel like the follow-up to Riot and Everyone. But Generation Wild did. Out of all the singers that came and went, Simon understood the assignment. He saw the bar Dave set and raised it, tailoring his look, attitude and voice to match his. He became the guy we needed him to be. Simon's era was electric. The art stronger, the videos more dangerously dark and insightful, and the gigs, oh man, the gigs, they were somehow more alive. In between songs he would wax lyrical about Dave's work, in particular the lyrics from Straight Out of Hell. We're the heuristic prophets in this modern curse of time we don't confide. He took Dave's words and he tried to understand them. It was all in the details for me, and that's something you just didn't get with a hired gun like Olli. Songs like Generation Wild, Rebel, Armageddon and Native Nature, I mean, come on. Everything in these songs' DNA screamed Crashdiet. This was what it was truly all about. The Savage Playground gave us more of that same energy. You didn't just listen to these albums, you felt them in your very core. They made you feel powerful. They made all of those bad feelings along with your shitty week evaporate into nothing. That hair-raising, adrenaline-surging feeling of elation, that's what Simon did, and that's what Olli perhaps failed to do. But it wasn't just about Simon being the greatest frontman ever. It was everything else too. I remember the buzz, the resurgence of rock, the scene alive, well and full of promise. While pop music echoed throughout the many empty bars and nightclubs across Ireland in the peak of the recession, something different was happening in the rock scene. The Sleaze underground was on the rise and making a comeback, as was the music itself. Generation Wild was in the charts, Black Rain had dropped Lethal Dose Of, newcomers Jet Black, Wild Street, Kiss and Dynamite, and of course Santa Cruz were beginning to make their mark. My Friends in Music were also doing well too. Rock clubs and rock team nights in Ireland were actually expanding, all of it leading up to Crashdiet playing an unprecedented gig in Dublin with my friends opening for them. Thanks to MySpace, you could see the entire infrastructure of the whole scene falling into place. Music videos, tours, samples of albums actively being shared and talked about in real time. It really felt as though the scene was in our hands and that there was a real chance that this type of music, if given enough time, could make its long anticipated comeback and burst its way back into the mainstream charts where it needed to be. Not just on a niche rock radio station, but every radio station. But it all became far too much for Simon, who ultimately got consumed by the very character he created for himself in the band. Ultimately, he ended up leaving and choosing a bizarre but peaceful way to live out his days. These days his hobbies include cycling, sleeping under bridges and occasionally posting vague obtruse stories on Instagram to, I think, keep us guessing on whether or not his lunacy has finally ceased. But you know, as long as he's safe and happy, more power to him. But in short, and to my disappointment, he wasn't going to be coming back anytime soon. And so, enter the new challenger. A SoundCloud singer-songwriter who favoured 3-chord trick ballads named Gabriel Calendar. It felt as if he came out of the ether, I guess because he did. Nearly 3 years had passed without so much as a peep out of the band, and then out of nowhere this 5'0" dude looking like he just won Swedish Idol appears out of nowhere with a voice that's incredible, but he's tiny and he lacks presence, so I can't really take him seriously. So, you know, where's Simon? Where the fuck is Simon, dude? In Gabriel's time with the band, he delivered Crashdiet 2 great albums in Rust and Automaton. Albums that people truly love and appreciate today, and there are many people who love and adore him for his work in the band. His time in Crashdiet was unprecedented. Rust came out just before COVID and Automaton dropped a little after it, but there's no doubt he got stuck with the COVID era. Socially distant and locked away from each other, he navigated the way forward as best he could for the band. Live stream gigs were so bizarre, weren't they? The whole thing felt like a social experiment. Steel Panther, Kiss and Dynamite, they were all doing it. But all that madness aside, the magic for me just wasn't quite there, and I guess it hadn't been for a while. COVID-19 aside, everything about the world had been changing for a while, and not for the betterment of rock and roll. Over the many cultural shifts that have taken place in the past decades, things began to change. The scene and how everyone views rock today is just different from how they viewed it a decade previous. As other trends took precedence, rock bars across the world began to close down. Rock team nights became few and far between, and the us versus them politics of today fundamentally changed what looking and being rock and roll was all about. And a gatekeeping divide between 80s glam fans and fans of the new wave began to form across sites like Reddit. As a result, our brand of rock and its scene has all but faded away, becoming nothing more than a costume for every 80s TikTok influencer, leaving the new wave of Swedish Sleaze somewhat stuck in the mud and overlooked, along with the leaders who started it all, looking a little tired and, dare I say it, a bit lethargic. Paired with a singer that, in my eyes, just didn't quite fit the mould, trying to recapture the message of Riot and Everyone in songs like Rust, Reptile, Shine On and Weird Allegiance. They were all great songs, but there's only so many times you can rewrite Riot and Everyone before that message loses all gravity, and especially if it lacks conviction, which I feel it did. There's a rule in writing that I think applies to songwriting too. The rule is, first you write with your head, then you go back and you write with your heart. If I take the Gabriel era albums and I really look at them objectively, it looks like the band wrote what they thought we wanted to hear, not what was truly inside, and that's why I just didn't believe Gabriel when he sang those songs. Rust, Automaton and the Unattractive Revolution, I don't think these albums quite match the raw energy of Riot and Everyone, Generation Wild or The Savage Playground. They feel worlds apart from me, as does the album covers. You know, something else that sort of rubbed me the wrong way about Gabriel was that the whole time he was in the band, it sort of felt like he was cosplaying as the big glam metal rock star. Because even though Gabriel had branded himself with the Crashdiet Anarchy logo, almost as soon as Gabriel left, he ditched the long hair and the rock attire almost as fast as he had put it all on, all to return to D, Seat9 and Poxy fucking G. So even though some people prefer him over Simon, for the reasons I mentioned, he just wasn't it for me. I didn't believe him. How could I believe a man who prefers to play Coldplay tunes to people whose idea of fun is 5 minutes of Missionary and a Diet Coke? With all critiques aside, the strange thing is, I don't blame him. At the end of the day, music is a business. When you're young, you start out doing it because you're a musician following your dream. You're doing it for the right reasons, but As time goes on, the need to be a starving artist to be rock and roll gets replaced by family and responsibility. Life becomes bigger than just you, and if after 10 years you're not standing on the balcony of your mansion overlooking a swimming pool and a line of flash cars in the driveway, you have to ask yourself if the grind has truly been worth it and if it's worth it to keep going. So I don't blame the band or him for being tired or wanting to stop altogether. Crashdiet and the bands under their wing didn't get the same level of support or respect bands in the 80s did. Bands in the new wave had to navigate a complex web of chart systems, social media, piracy, lack of airplay and validation, the explosion of so many new genres of music, and now something so unprecedented it would have sounded made up 5 years ago. AI, a tool that has become so overly abused by bands, artists and creators across the board they don't even realise, much less care about the impact it's having, because why make your own thumbnail when AI can do it? Why write a song when AI can do it? I mean, what's next? Hey Gemini, how do I wipe my own arse? Where's the line? Because every social media site adapted TikTok like Reels, people's attention spans have now drastically lowered. It isn't enough to simply make one music video anymore. No, if you want to make it in music, you have to constantly churn out 30-second videos of you miming your own song in the kitchen, the toilet, or wherever else you can. Better make sure them hashtags are relevant, and make sure you don't use too many because the algorithm might think you're spamming. Better follow that stupid latest trend, whatever it is, in the hopes that some little gobshite will buy a ticket to your gig just to hear the 30 seconds of your song you used in that video. The one he shot out of his loudspeaker, you know, the one you spent months in a recording studio making sound perfect. Yeah, that one. Case in point, Famewild, a band that should on its own merits be huge but has had to resort to doing stuff like this. In fact, it's true all across the board, not just for bands but also artists in other genres too. The sad reality of this is that even the best of them who made it in this genre still have to work a regular 9 to 5 and still do to this day, so when you really take it all in, I guess I can see why Gabriel chose to leave. Drummer Eric also stepped away to look after his mental health and eventually shifted careers altogether, becoming a technician for bigger stadium bands. Peter found himself with a herniated disc in his back from having to support the scene for so long, and also stepped away to look after his physical and mental health and focus on family. All this closing the door in yet another chapter in Crashdiet's history. I realise that not everyone shares the same opinions that I do, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't like Olli or Gabriel because they weren't my favourites. Music is subjective, and if their time with the band resonates with you, that is brilliant. Embrace it. And if you love Olli or Gabriel as much as the people fiercely defended them in my comments section, then why not make a documentary video yourselves? With only Martin left, the proverbial ship of Theseus was once again in need of new parts. The band had been in a transitional phase for quite a while. First it was Eric, then Peter, and finally Gabriel. But as the band stands today, we have new blood that strangely enough feels like they've always belonged there since the beginning. It's weird, but this new lineup has somehow managed to recapture the magic and feelings I once felt all those years ago, along with this mad hope that the name Crashdiet might just defy the odds once more. The most valuable change in this band for me was the guy who took the mic, John Elliott of Confess. There's something beautifully powerful about John's voice. It's not just the high notes, there's something more. It's conviction. You believe it when he sings the songs because he's the real deal. There's a slight rasp to his voice, the type of rasp that can only be obtained through time and experience, of slugging it out, of putting in the work. When I first heard him in Confess years ago, I got this spine tingling, hair raising feeling like this band could take on the world. The it factor spilled out of Confess, and 2017's Haunters was my introduction. The album has great cover art that feels like it's set in the world of biker mice from Mars. Pair that with a sound that is modern 80s and it's a strange kind of perfection indeed. That's a hard thing to nail, but they did it. Strange Kind of Affection, Stand Our Ground, Talia. So many of the songs on this album captured that nostalgia factor every OG Glam fan would want if they bothered to look. But this band was also a breath of fresh air. They kick you up the hole in a good way. Their powerful energy taps into the soul and re-energises you. If you're having a bad day, you listen to Confess. So who better to reignite a much needed flame under Crashdiet than John? Backed by Midnight Danger's Chris Young and Toxic Roses' Michael Sweet, who happens to be Martin's brother, you pair them all together and you have yourself one hell of a supergroup to carry on the name Crashdiet. You need proof? Then look no further than the Art of Chaos. Everything from the tracks to the album art look like they've been a labour of love. The art style for me feels familiar yet fresh. It looks like it fits with the debut. If you're looking for tacky AI slop, you'll not find it here. The artwork for the album was done by Patrick Norman, and the first track of the album is named Satisfaction, and it's all about rebelling against the great HAL machine. The HAL machine is a reference to the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. They finally found what pissed them off again, and I love it. Ain't no diet heads that'll crumble for that HAL machine. Our satisfaction is your destruction. You think you're in control, but we're looking at you like trash. I love these lyrics, and I love this song, and I love that Crashdiet seems to be taking a stand against all that AI slop and bullshit. I'd like to think that in reality they feel the same way I do about all of this. For a music video done in a warehouse, the lighting, camera work and colour tints make the whole production pop. It's fresh, it's in your face, and it feels full of energy and vitality. Uploaded to YouTube on February 9th, 2026, Satisfaction stands in stark contrast against the back catalogue of tired, worn out, do-it-yourself music videos recorded with the previous singer. Sick Enough delivers more of that same energy and quality, keeping the recipe simple, but the execution solid. Crashdiet have always been a bit of a darker band, such is the nature of a sleaze rock band. It's a Miracle, Fall and Rain, Savor. It's debatable whether or not any of Crashdiet's softer songs were ever ballads in a traditional sense, but Love Blind is unmistakably a glam metal ballad, and a good one at that. It's not as dark or as grim as past attempts, but this song paired with a video that gives me November Rain vibes feels like a step in the right direction, a new, more logical direction. Crashdiet are more upbeat on this album, a little less sleazy and a little more hopeful, and community driven, backed by the worldwide Chaos Magnetic Alliance, cameoed by an all-star cast in the scene. You can check them all out singing along to Chaos Magnetic. There's also a lyric video and a live tour type video for this song too. But perhaps the best song in this album is its final one, the one that didn't get a video. Edge of a Knife. It has great lyrics, strong hooks and nuances that could only be drawn out by a voice like John's. I'm still processing the art of chaos like I would if I had a tasty Irish cider. I'm taking proverbial sips of it when I need it the most and then putting it away and then coming back to it because I don't want to overplay it. I don't want to play it to death. I want to soak it in because it deserves that. Its replay value is so strong and it's well worth a listen if you have the time. As far as touring and live performances go, Crashdiet don't shy away from showing you the raw, ugly truth about what it's like to be a band like Crashdiet in the present day. Sometimes it's big festival with crowds of people like Days Gone By. Other times it's small, intimate venues playing your heart out so that the people at the other side of the bar will come and see you. Sometimes it's a sweaty backstage area right next to the stage with no toilet or aircon. It's flying economy. It's squashed into the back of a tiny van travelling from one place to the next. There's no limousines, there's no first class flights, but what there is after all of these years are the fans and a band dedicated to those fans. A band that is fighting to keep glam metal alive in everything that it does. There is something so intrinsically important about Crashdiet and the legacy that its name carries that makes this band far more important to the fans than the legends that came before. Crashdiet may never have its rightful place in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or be talked about by the self-appointed rock gurus or historians who sit at the desks of popular magazines, TV and radio, and yet time and time again through each passing decade, Crashdiet manages to reappear and defy the odds, break the trends and the very nature of what it means to be rock and roll, continuing to support the kids of the underground. It isn't Motley Crue, Poison or Dave Leopard fighting to keep this scene alive. It never was. It's Crashdiet and the bands under their wing doing that. And as the world of popular culture and music becomes more dystopian, as rock and its basement-dwelling critics on Reddit cling to the bands of the 1980s for dear life, refusing to acknowledge the existence of the new wave, Crashdiet is our anchor point. Sweden was our LA, and whether it was Dave, Olli, Simon, Gabriel or John, they contributed to something greater. So it doesn't matter who ends up picking up the next instrument. All members of the worldwide Chaos Magnetic Alliance will always stand united and strong as a community and continue to support this brilliant band, our scene and each other. Crashdiet and the legacy Dave Leopard managed to create will live on, because Crashdiet is forever. This has been Crashdiet Forever by Richie Kearns Productions. Thank you very much for watching.